All right, the first ever Jabal and Cars AMA. You guys got questions, I got answers. Let's hear that first one.
So, Ray the Player wants to know, which one is better, the GR86 or the Miata you own right now?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that if you have only one vehicle, the GR86 is the better buy because it's so much more practical. You can fold the seats down, you have rear seats, you can actually fit a lot in that car. I had an FRS, which is very similar to the GR86, of course, for 9 years. It was my only vehicle, and even installed a tow hitch on the back so I could take my bike to Red Rock, which is where I'm heading right now. The Miata, it feels more compromised in that sense. However, if you want it as a second or third car, I think the Miata feels more special simply because it is lighter, you have better suspension geometry with double wishbone rather than McPherson strut, and straight from factory, it's not going to be as playful as the GR86, but if you plan on modifying it, the Miata gets more things right in my mind. Things like the steering, the suspension geometry, the weight, the top-down experience. If you want a convertible, that feels more special for your second or third car versus your primary. So if it's your only car, GR86. If not, Miata.
Alright. Adam Pearlman 544 says, modded ND3 Miata or stock F87 M2 competition for street use.
Ooh, so there, I would have easily said Miata, but there was a modded F87 M2 that I drove against an Acura Integra Type S, and it was so good. It showed me that the M2 doesn't have to be numb. It can be incredibly communicative and balanced and have an incredible suspension tuning, and just it took a lot of money and mods. But between my Miata or that car, I would literally choose that car. The one thing I don't like though is that you get turbo lag, and when you're pushing more power, it's hard to avoid that. I like dancing with cars at the limit. So if it was mostly for street or track, I'm not sure if that would really change the situation. I guess the Miata on track consumables are going to be a lot less, which makes me lean more that way.
CMW9762 asks, how would you rate the quote fun to drive quote factor among the GV70, RDX, and CX50? I know you love the CX50.
I haven't driven the RDX. I've driven the GV70, which was way too soft and not dynamic enough for me. I like the CX50, the way it drives a lot more than the GV70. Haven't driven the RDX.
Avery4528 says, why'd you buy Miata and an Emira over a track-ready used 981S or GTS or Spider Boxster? An example, why go for 2/1?
The answer of 2/1 is because by having two different sports cars, you can have two very distinct experiences. The Emira versus the Miata, very different in terms of what you get as an owner and as a driver. As for those cars, I've talked about why I chose Emira over Porsche in other videos, and while I love what Porsche is doing, there is a certain level of communication that this car has that those cars simply don't. Although the engine in those Porsches, especially in the newer Porsches, is a lot more special than what we have in the Emira.
Pan4632 wants to know which brand new 2025 car has the best steering in your opinion.
That's a good question. I mean, at the attainable range, it's hard to say. At the non-attainable range, I'd say McLaren 750S. That car actually, I keep a spreadsheet, the Jabal and Cars Driving Index. I rate all the cars that I review on the channel. And the McLaren, I think, might be the only car that has perfect 10 out of 10 steering. I used to think the Lotus Elise had perfect 10 out of 10 steering until I drove the McLaren 750S, because the 750S, there's this concept of signal to noise, right? So the Elise is so raw, it's constantly chattering away. There's a lot of signal and a lot of noise. But in the McLaren, the way they've tuned that hydraulic steering is that you get a lot of signal and very, very little noise. And you have just as much, if not more, useful information compared to something like a Lotus Elise as a result. So that signal to noise ratio being so good, and the directness and the feedback and the load up mid-corner, it was just impeccable. 750S.
From Hari85, how's the Emira as your daily? I was between getting an Emira or a 991.2 Carrera base.
The Emira is not my daily. A CX50 is my daily. I don't drive this car that often. It only has a couple thousand miles on it after a year of ownership. So I think as a daily, a Porsche is going to have fewer issues. Like I sometimes have electronic gremlins where CarPlay doesn't work, or the reverse cam, like the lines don't show up. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I would choose a Porsche if it was my daily. The 991 Carrera, though, if you're going 991.2 and you have a turbocharged engine, it's a better daily driver for sure, but it's not going to feel as communicative. It's not going to feel as special, I would say, in a lot of different ways versus the Emira. If you went for a naturally aspirated Porsche, then I think the engine is a much more compelling argument, but if you're getting a base 991.2 with a turbo engine, it's not very compelling, let's just say that.
Blaster Juno's asks, would you rather take a used Lexus or a new Toyota for a daily driver?
I mean, a used Lexus is generally going to be more comfortable, but it depends on how old it is. I still want things like CarPlay. So if in this person's budget, a used Lexus still has CarPlay and it's still 10 or fewer years old, and probably, for CarPlay it has to be less than that, then I would probably choose Lexus. But I don't like going super old, like a 30-year-old Lexus. The safety and the reliability is not an issue, but the safety and various driver assist, if you want to have adaptive cruise control, things like that, you're not going to be able to enjoy those. So maybe I'd choose Lexus if it's not super old. If not, I would go with a newer Toyota.
From TT92348, what would be your choice for a daily around 35K brand new if your main focus is steering feel?
Oh, main focus is steering feel. Okay, initially I was going to go G86, but that steering feel is not good. Miata, if you can handle such a small car as your daily. I'm trying to think what other cars have great steering feel. The Elantra N for a front-wheel drive car has pretty good steering. Is it as good as the Miata? Definitely not. It's better than the Civic Type R, though. Those cars are also... The Civic Type R is out of budget there. Elantra N, maybe, but there's better steering cars than a front-wheel drive Elantra N at that price point, new on the market. Would I choose a Golf? Not really. Not if steering feel was my priority. I guess what they say is true. Miata's always the answer.
Anonymous WO4ZU says, I really love my Acura MDX. Hate the MPG. Had a fantastic experience with Acura, almost 300k miles on my baby, but it may be nearing its last leg soon. Any recommendations for my next car, preferably a SUV with better than 20 mpg? Haha.
Well, the CX-50 is not good at gas mileage, but it is more than 20. It's like, 23. Keep in mind, though, guys, a lot of people focus on what the computer, your dash, tells you in terms of mpg. That is notoriously unreliable. It's going to be off by at least a couple each time, and generally it will give you a more favorable reading, at least from my experience. So what I do is I use this app called Fuely, and you put in the gallons, the cost, the mileage, and it'll calculate it for you. People say, oh, why not just calculate it on a calculator? Because Einstein. Are you going to actually keep a spreadsheet and manually update it? No, an app makes it a lot simpler. We just put in 3 numbers, hit update, and then you can watch the trends and see things over time. It'll tell you if your fuel efficiency is getting better or worse. So I guess, I don't know, man. Like, when it comes to CUVs, I'm not the expert. I care about different things than the average CUV buyer. I would choose CX-50, even though the fuel efficiency is barely over 20. Other CUVs that I would consider, I want to drive the RDX. I test drove the ADX, but I wasn't enamored by the way that it drove. You guys can see my review of that down in the description. The Kia Sportage, not... I guess I don't really focus on fuel efficiency, so I don't even know off the top of my head, other than like a RAV4 hybrid, which one is going to have good fuel efficiency for your needs. But for me, fuel efficiency is like number 10 on the list, and I just don't focus on that personally. So sorry, I'm not the best person.
Mr. Lazy1X1 says, how do you justify the depreciation hit when buying a brand new car and selling it after a few years, personally in this situation?
So the way I see it is like, you gotta balance life is short, enjoy it now, versus fiscal optimization. And if I was going just for financial optimization alone, I would not be buying new sports cars. I would be just driving my CX-50, and that'd be it. And I wouldn't be as happy. And if I was indulging just joy and hey, life is now, don't wait, you don't know how long you live, I'd buy a McLaren 750S. But those depreciate really hard, and you gotta find something in the middle. So I guess for me, I've just come to terms with the fact that I will buy these cars based on what I like, what is enjoyable, what's exciting to me, and based on my financial calculations, I don't even keep in mind the price of the value of the car after I buy it. To me, it's zero. So when I am looking at my overall net worth or my financial picture and planning things, planning for, buying a house or buying a new car or just, retirement or whatever, I don't even factor in the car, because the car, I don't know what the depreciation curve is going to look like in 5 or 10 years. I don't know how long I'm going to keep each of these cars either. It just varies. The GR86 was 2 years. FRS was 9 years. Like, this car is already 1 year, and I feel like I'm going to keep it for at least a few more. So I guess for me, I just don't prioritize it. But if you're okay with going with an older car and, of course, do a PPI and get it at a lower price, then it makes a lot of sense. I couldn't do that with the ND3 because the ND2 steering was a deal breaker for me. The ND3 was significantly better. The Lotus Emira, I got the first one sold in Las Vegas, so I couldn't get a used one here, obviously. But if I was in the market for a GTS 4.0 or another Porsche, then yeah, I would have considered used.
From Mike M6792, how many years into depreciation is it best to sell a car if you don't plan to keep it forever?
No, I don't know. I know that the best time to buy a car from the depreciation curve is usually I think they say 3-ish years, but it's going to depend on the vehicle. Certain cars like Porsche 911s that don't depreciate that much, I wonder if there's a different optimal time. I'm not sure. I'm not the expert on that. That's a great question, though.
Okay. From Scott Colpitts 8521, in your opinion, is it better to own multiple cheaper-ish cars, one expensive one, and maybe a cheap daily or beater?
That's a good question. We got a lot of great questions. I think that if you're the kind of person that enjoys variety, then having multiple cars, after owning multiple cars, I'm like, damn, I can't go back. Now I have 3 cars, right? A daily and 2 sports cars. It's hard for me to go back and consolidate. But then when you're younger and you can't afford it, then you need to find one all-purpose vehicle. But yeah, one expensive sports car with a cheap daily or multiple cheap sports cars with a cheap daily. I would personally go with multiple cheaper sports cars because I just enjoy the variety. And I'm really fortunate that thanks to you guys, I'm able to drive a ton of cars. And by driving a lot of cars, reviewing them for this channel, I've also, I guess, reinforced the belief I have that I love variety. And if I wasn't doing this, then it would make me feel even stronger that I would want to have multiple different sports cars to choose from of my own.
From Greg Lopes, cheap daily and expensive fun car, question mark, or expensive daily and cheap fun car. One or the other in this scenario, can't be both expensive, LO.
So expensive car is either the daily or the sports car, and the other one is cheap. Is that right? So this actually reminds me of this NC Miata comparison we did in LA. So Eric is great at setting up cars. He actually set up both cars. One is his own, one is his buddy's. I remember the cheaper one was just hilarious. It had this Coke can shifter, it had a cracked windshield, and it was, I think, all in 10 grand, 13 grand, car plus mods, super cheap, and it was a ton of fun. If you're gonna be driving your daily a lot, if you work from home like me, I would probably just go expensive sports car. But for most people, you need to be commuting to and from work, you gotta be going to the gym, to the grocery store, visiting family, whatever, in your daily. I'd probably want that to be more comfortable because when you spend more money there, it's a more comfortable, insulated, lower NVH experience. Better driving aids, all that stuff. But when it comes to your sports car, you don't care for NVH. You actually want something that's more raw. You want more of an experience. You don't want driving aids. You don't care for those things. So I would go expensive daily and cheap sports car.
From 350ZHR, do you think the STK is worth the price and it's really that emotional compared to ND3?
Yeah, it is definitely far more emotional than the ND3 because of the powertrain. The engine and transmission is just, they definitely both feel far more special than the ND3. Now, is it worth the price? That's more of a personal thing. I think given the age, given the issues with buying a used car like that and parts and all that stuff, a car that's so old, it's really hard, I think, for most people to justify 25 grand for a car like that. But, when I get to the point where I can justify getting one, I would love to, not because I think it's a good buy at that price, but because I want one so bad, and I think that they provide something that's so special and hard to replace that I would be willing to bite the bullet for that, but only, only when it feels like dropping 25K on a toy like that is not frivolous.
From slow car, fast beats. Dream fleet by the time you're 45 years old.
Oh, by the time I'm 45, so I got 11 years. Let's see. Some kind of Porsche 911 GT3. If you were to ask me right now, it would be, I'm not sure like what the future ones are going to be like. Hopefully they still stay naturally aspirated and lightweight and all that stuff, but for me it would probably be right now a 991.2 or a 997.2. I can't decide because the 997.2 I think is more fun to drive and a bit more raw and more of an occasion. I'd probably go with that. Then if I had to choose from fewer cars, I'd choose 991.2 because it is more refined. You can drive it more frequently. But if I have a big fleet, 997.2, the 3.8 RS is probably the one for me. The 4.0 is like, it is better, but it's like 5% better. The 3.8 RS gets you most of the way there. I'd want an S2000 for sure. Heavily track prepped, just like Eric's, the Blue Arrow one that was incredible. You could, people often think of just the steering wheel as the only way to actually steer a car, but you can use the brakes and the throttle as well to steer the car, especially when you're on track. And the way that he had calibrated that car, you can get throttle-induced rotation, turn after turn, just get the perfect amount of slip angle. It was brilliant. On the Caymans, you're not braking in such a way that you're really playing with trail braking oversteer, because that's just not safe on public roads. But I imagine on track, like, that would just be phenomenal, a 10 out of 10 experience. So I would love to have a car just like that. I would want something that's kind of like this car, something that is mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, fun, like excellent on street, especially when you're driving at like 7/10ths. Either an NA1 NSX or a Lotus Emira, one of the two for that spot. So that's 3 sports cars, and then the 4th I would say would be like a Porsche Cayenne as my daily.
From the same commenter, what's the uppermost echelon of motorsport that you will ever aspire to participate in? Do you hope to be a gentleman driver of some sort someday?
Dude, I would love to be a rich fuck that could be a gentleman driver.
He says a la McDreamy, except maybe McJamal.
McDreamy, but McJamal. That's funny. Dude, someday getting to participate in like Le Mans or some crazy shit would be awesome, but I don't know how realistic and how important that is to me. I think I find so much fun just going on track and beating the shit out of my cars. And I've been doing a little bit of sim racing the last year, and racing with people virtually is actually much more exhilarating. So maybe at a certain point when I start getting tired of just track days, HPDE, and time trials and such, or time attack I should say, then yeah, maybe I'll look into becoming a gentleman driver when I'm older and more successful and can afford to drop a couple milli in a season to be a gentleman driver.
Okay, same commenter, 3rd question. Which one do you get asked more of, doctor advice or car advice?
Oh, definitely doctor advice. That's my main gig. That's like, we have 1.7 million on the Medical Insiders channel, 250K on the Kevin Jabal MD channel, and that is like what I live and breathe most days. It's handling that stuff, and then at the end of the workday, like today, or on the weekends, I do the car stuff. So this is more like a passion project.
Casey Close says, can you go through the list of all the cars you owned, and which of those past cars do you reminisce about the most?
Scion FRS, Toyota GR86. Those are the only 2 sports cars I've owned prior to my car garage. The FRS I think of more favorably and more fondly because amazing steering, a lot of great memories. Engine really sucked, but like that car taught me a lot about driving, and it felt more special. The GR86 felt very muted and better engine, better NVH, better chassis rigidity, worse steering, not as engaging. And after selling it, I only owned it for like a year and a half. I didn't really miss it much.
Bad Nomad 1015. How do you feel about the Mustang Mach 4-door that's rumored? Is it a missed opportunity to introduce a different nameplate?
Yeah, the whole Mustang thing, look, what they did is very intelligent. You don't like it, I don't like it. Using like the Mustang Mach E as an example, they're cashing in on the brand name of Mustang, right? And people that actually care about driving and cars and sports cars, they're like, oh my god, this is outrageous, but it gets us talking about it. So like from a marketing perspective, it was intelligent. Do I like it? No. But like at the end of the day, these are businesses that need to make money, and if it makes them more money to call an EV a Mustang Mach E or this new four-door, the Mustang Mach 4 or whatever, then yeah, you know, like I guess the Mach 4, I don't know anything about it. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. I'm guessing it's not an EV, but it's like a four-door Mustang or something. I don't know. But like when it comes to these naming things, it's not that big of a deal. At the end of the day, a car is a car. They can name it whatever they want, and if it gets under your skin, I mean, they're doing their job. Like they're getting you to talk about it.
From Steve Martigani. Just put down a deposit on a 2025 NT3 Sport yesterday in order to meet the potential tariff price increases. Anyway, any suggestions for luggage for travel with the small trunk of the ND? Going to be solo driving it on some longer trips this year.
Dude, no idea. I did a trip with my girlfriend and we struggled. I was like, hey, pack light. So I packed like a very small thing. She did not pack light, as girls generally don't. And it was a struggle. Like, could barely close the trunk. Actually, the trunk like wouldn't close. Like the latch got the hinge got kind of out of alignment at one point because it was overfilled. But I would just choose something that's not a hard shell, not structured. Choose like a duffel bag, because then you can squeeze it in, since the actual trunk space has like a weird, like, it's not totally flat. So with something that's soft, you can kind of mold it into the little crevices.
David Gontard 384. Any plans to visit Australia? There are some great scenic and also driving roads in the state of Victoria you might really enjoy.
Dude, I've always wanted to go to Australia and New Zealand, but it just hasn't aligned yet. Nothing on the calendar right now, but who knows, maybe in the next couple of years. I'd love to make it out.
Ether BK1. What city do you live in? Asking because curious which tracks you might enjoy the most.
This beautiful city of Las Vegas, and the main track I go to here is Spring Mountain Motorsports Ranch in Pahrump. It's about 45 minutes northwest of Las Vegas. And there's also LVMS, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, which I've also run before, but it's not as good of a track as the various tracks at Spring Mountain.
Daniel Kim 9587. Best all-around car for track, back roads, and some daily around 150k and under.
Who, daily as well? I mean, you gotta go Porsche 911. 997 GT3? I don't know, some people would say that's too punishing for a daily, but I guess you could do a 991.1 GT3. I mean, you know, the .1 with the engine issues, you can get sub 150k, but then get one that has the warranty replacement and such. Yeah, I'd say a 991.1 GT3 or 997 if you can handle a bit more race car.
From Slow Car Fast Beans again. What's your process of learning to drive fast in the rain? I watched the movie Racing in the Rain, My Life as a Dog, after a baseline run and then went out again, but didn't run any faster.
Oh, I haven't watched that movie. Honestly, I don't think I've really focused or honed my skill of driving fast in the rain, because it hasn't been a priority. I think for me, I just have so much to learn driving in the dry that like the rain is, you know, like when I do reviews driving other people's cars in the rain based on road conditions, tires, and the fact that it's not my car, I drive way underneath the limit. And I live in a desert, so it doesn't rain here that often either. I would love to do a track day in the wet. It'd be fun, at least to slide the car around a lot, but that was something I focused on. I would imagine that sim racing would help, and then just spending more time on track during wet track days would be optimal.
From the same commenter, what particular skill did you struggle with and had to deliberately work on most in HPDE? Did you need to learn or devise a new methodology or principles to overcome your struggles?
Looking ahead came pretty easy. Driver line came pretty easy, because I played a lot of Gran Turismo as a kid, granted on the remote, never with like an actual wheel. So I think I picked it up pretty quick. One thing that actually comes up is like when driving a stick shift car with a 3-point seatbelt and not having aggressive bucket seats, like with my GR86 and stuff, it took me a while to figure out how to stay planted in the seat. And there are two things I did. Number one is like you just push really fucking hard with your left foot so that you're pushing yourself backwards into the seat to help you stay in place, which can help to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, like when you clutch into shift mid-corner, then you lose that, right? So then the other tactic was like you slide your seat forward, trigger the seatbelt like auto lock so that it doesn't pull out anymore, and then you slide your seat back. Or sorry, rather you start with your seat slid back, lock it, and then you slide forward, so now it tightens up even more. And that's what I've done on the racetrack. But of course, I also wear a Simpson Racing Hybrid like Hans that works with a 3-point, because if you do that, the seatbelt is now no longer operating in its optimal way, doing what I just described. So then there is a safety issue there. And again, none of this is actual advice to follow. This is proceed with caution at your own risk. I would personally mitigate that risk, and what I have done and continue to do is use that Simpson Hybrid S.
From Slow Car Fast Beans, do you also think that sparkle gloves are too bulky around the fingers compared to a Star gloves, or is that just me?
I generally use Alpine Stars, so I don't have that much experience with Sparco. But keep in mind, each brand has their own lineup, and one thing I've seen even amongst like very experienced drivers and YouTubers is like you gotta just try out different things. I got some gloves recently that they had external seams, and my buddy got them too, and he was like, "Oh, these are like lower quality. Look at this stuff." And I was like, "No, those are called external seams, and those are good because your hand now on the inside is not having to touch a seam, which is like a pressure point. It's now just a totally smooth surface that fits over your finger like a glove." And he's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that." And this is, he tracks a lot, so like, try out different things, try out different models, see what you like. I have no issue with the Alpine Stars gloves, and you'll be seeing some other gloves as well that have external seams in some future track days. Oh, and also on the Jabal and Sim Racing channel, which you can find linked below, because when I do my sim racing, you'll see those gloves as well.
From Okay Letty Licky, what are some cars that disappointed you the most after reviewing them? Any pleasant surprises?
Oh, that's such a good question. Dude, there have been a few big disappointments. There have been a few really big disappointments. Aston Martin V12 Vantage, because I love the V8. It's such a brilliant sports car that has a little bit of a GT flair. The V12 is full sports car, and this was also a roadster. Chassis rigidity, weight, the engine wasn't as forward and loud as I wanted to for a V12. That was a big disappointment. I mean, just considering how much I love the V8, I was like, okay, the V12 will just be better, and it really wasn't. I would choose the V8 any day, even if they were the same price. I would choose the V8. Another one I would say is actually the M2. The M2 comp's a lot better, but the base M2 is so numb, so nervous, so not what I was expecting. And you can actually find my Jabal and Cars driving index linked below, and that's where I score these cars. So you'll see where I score the V12 Vantage. You'll see where I score the M2 F87, because I try to add like an objective number to the driving experience. And the very last column is called emotionality. And those cars that were incredibly exciting, like the Ariel Atom, I think is the only car to have ever gotten a 5 out of 5 emotionality. That also encapsulates a bit of the like how exciting a car is beyond just spec sheet, and beyond just like the other more objective metrics in the spreadsheet. That's like handling and engine and the steering and the transmission, things like that.
From Slow Car Fast Beans, who does your interior decor?
Interior decor in my house? I mean, how are people seeing that? Like, this is a car channel, but I've done it myself. It's not perfect, but I've learned a lot of things over the years from following Nick Lewis on YouTube and educating myself on a few other resources. So yeah, some things I would change in hindsight, but that's what I've done.
All right, last question. Best for last. From GR Ferraris. Did it hurt when you fell from heaven?
It did. I actually got a scar right here to show for it, but it's healing well, and hopefully I'll be back in action in no time. My friends, thank you all for the questions. That was awesome, a lot of fun. Stay tuned for the next AMA. If you want your question answered, then make sure you're subscribed. You can ask in the next AMA. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in the next one.